Hello there, and welcome to Corpus Denizens. Pull up a chair, I'll fix you a drink, and let's talk about immersion.
What happens when you read a book, watch a movie, play a video game, or even a pen and paper role-playing game? I think it varies, almost as much as there are people in the world. Stories are told in many different mediums, and they're all meant to engage our imaginations in different ways. Books let you picture everything yourself while you read. Movies show you through motion and art combined. And games, well, games are special because you get to put yourself right in there with the characters. You become a character too. You get to be immersed. I discovered recently that I have a mental characteristic called aphantasia. The definition is when your brain doesn't form or use mental images as part of your thinking or imagination. For most of my life up until now, I thought that phrases like picture this, mental image, and mind's eye were hyperbolic. I can't picture things, and I didn't realize that other people actually could. Let's do a little experiment. Close your eyes. Actually close them. Now when I say picture a purple apple, what do you see? Okay, open them. It might look something like this for some people, or it could look like this. For me though, it looks like this. Or at least this is as close as I can approximate with editing software. I can intellectually understand what a purple apple might look like, but I don't actually see anything really. It's like lighting a match in a windstorm. For a brief moment, I might be able to conjure a small light, but then it's gone almost instantly. That's how mental images work for me. A friend described it like having a blueprint in your head rather than the actual item itself. My older sister and I have always strongly disagreed in the debate of movies versus books. She loves books and just tolerates movies, and I'm the opposite. I never understood why until I told her about my aphantasia discovery a couple years ago, and she was dumbfounded. She replied saying, "So wait, when you read a book, you don't see your own private movie playing out in your head while you read?" It was my turn to be dumbfounded. If that were my experience of books, I would love them just as much as she does. But for me, they're just information. It's like reading a textbook. I can understand what I'm reading, but there's nothing experiential about it. There's no emotion, no depth, no immersion. Visual mediums like movies and video games are the only way I get to have that. But why does immersion even matter? Can't you enjoy stories without getting immersed? I think it matters to the extent that you care, and I think some people have a hard time letting themselves care. This is where suspension of disbelief comes into play. Suspension of disbelief is the willing avoidance of critical thinking and logic in understanding something that is unreal or impossible in reality. When you experience a story, the only way to fully and truly experience it is to shut off that inner voice that talks during the movie, so to speak. You have to get out of your head and let yourself be swept away by the story. That, I believe, is one possible step towards immersion. It's not the only way, but it's vital when it comes to story. People have different relationships to suspension of disbelief. A lot of people can't turn off that inner critic and won't let the story or game stand on its own. Others are unconsciously unwilling to let themselves feel anything, so they remain closed off. Whatever the reason, I think one part is vital. It has to be a conscious and willing choice. This applies to games just as much to movies and other mediums. And the somewhat divisive development in gaming is that they are becoming more and more like interactive movies as the years go by. Immersion is about story. Games used to be just a set of mechanics and objectives. Once story started coming in, so too did immersion. That's where that quote about Wing Commander and Chris Roberts inventing the interactive movie comes in. And to be clear, story isn't just about characters' plot and dialogue. Story is about world building, lore, internal logic, fine details, and discoveries beyond mechanical benefits. Think about wandering through the wastelands of Fallout, only to stumble upon a charred wreck of a house. Inside, the only surviving fixtures are the metal frame and springs of a bed, and on it 2 skeletons with their decaying arms wrapped around each other. Technically, there's no characters because they don't move or act or say anything, and there's no plot because nothing changes. And yet, in this vignette, there is a story. You, the player, know that because of the history of this world and the context that you found them in. There's a story that happened here that you're discovering for yourself, and it has nothing to do with you playing the game. With story comes immersion, and with immersion comes cohesion. want to make something super clear. Games do not need to be immersive or have a movie-like quality to be good. The only purpose of a game is to be fun. How it achieves that is entirely up to the developers and the players. And if the game wants to be just like a movie, that can be one way to do it. But ultimately, the point of a game is to give the players ways to interact with the game mechanics and make choices. They may be simple choices like left or right, or complex ones like whether an important NPC should live or die. But without choice, games are reduced to cheap, temporary entertainment like a Punch and Judy show or a YouTuber's wordy video essay. This is why I think it's important to distinguish games that are trying to be immersive and ones that aren't. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of different ways to make a game immersive, and it all depends on the intentions of the developers. In a perfect world, immersion is just another tool in their kit to make a game fun. Think about something like Heavy Rain. In a lot of ways, this was an interactive movie, much more so than games like Tomb Raider or Ocarina of Time. Quantic Dream leaned heavily on immersion into their story to deliver what's meant to be fun about it. If you were receptive to that, and suspended disbelief, you could become totally swept away by the game and get a great payoff by the end. Or you could find the mechanics boring and switch it off. That's where player choice matters. As players, we get to choose what's fun to us, and all the immersion in the world isn't going to fix a set of game mechanics that we find boring. But man, oh man, when a game gets it right, there is nothing better. I want to do a hopefully brief overview of some of the ways games can achieve immersion, because this is actually an intro video to a series. I want to review how different kinds of games create immersion and do a tier list of how effective they are. But first, a bird's eye view. I think there are 5 general categories that games use to create immersion: world building and lore, aesthetics and design, quests and storytelling, gameplay, and freedom. Under each of these categories, I have more detailed points of comparison that I'll get into in future video reviews, but I think it would be fun to do a quick comparison of 3 games that tackle immersion in incredibly different ways and to varying degrees of success: Star Citizen, Jedi Survivor, and Starfield. To be clear, this is definitely an apples to oranges to bananas comparison, I know. But that's the point, because all of these games want to use immersion as a way to make them more fun. They just do it differently from each other. Star Citizen has unprecedented realism and freedom when it works. Jedi Survivor has titanic world building and cinematic storytelling, and Starfield has some fantastic aesthetics and details in its design. What's important is not just how they tackle immersion, but also what the point of the game is. For Star Citizen, they want it to feel as realistic and tactile as possible. You have direct control over hundreds of in-game functions, granular things like switching different ship systems on and off, interacting with environmental elements that have no significant game mechanics attached yet, and most famously, no loading screens. Jedi Survivor, on the other hand, is first and foremost trying to emulate the experience of a true Star Wars film. You get cinematic, in-engine cutscenes with professional actors and full performance capture, and you get music and writing that matches or even exceeds what we see in the movies. They also went with no loading screens, kind of. They're just hidden behind in-game sections of linearity. This is where the lack of player choice in those moments tips the hand to the player that they're an interactive loading screen. But if it's an in-fiction event like going through hyperspace, then it still feels fairly immersive. Then there's Starfield. In a perfect world, Starfield's lore and world building would have supported the immersion, but things like your character's bounty being immediately reported across dozens of star systems when there's no in-universe interstellar communication really breaks that attempt. And storytelling would be far more effective if the writing were stronger. But I do think Starfield succeeds in the small details.
In the fleet, you either put up, shut up, or die. Your choice.
You get tons of player choice because so much of the world is interactive. You can pick up and move most objects, and the level of detail in the design makes the act of moving through the world enjoyable. At least the first time you do it. Repeating locations across star systems doesn't exactly help that. It's certainly not immersive. So I could go on and on about these games and others, but that's why I'm making a series. This is just the introduction to the concept. I'll take a much deeper dive into Star Citizen, Jedi Survivor, and Starfield first, and then branch out from there. If you have any suggestions for me, I'm happy to hear them. Just leave a comment and I'll add it to the list.
Oh my god!
Now, finish up drinks, slip me some coppers, and I'll see you again next time.
Hold on!
Can't this thing move faster? Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god!